help you somewhere.
Going down the basement.
Dad, what is this place?
Let me
This is really weird down here.
Motherhood is the best thing that can happen to a woman.
Mom!
You chose to be disrespectful, and this is your consequence.
Dawn's my dad is also your dad.
I want to go outside.
What do you think? I hid your sister down here?
Dad.
This is what happened, you ungrateful little girl!
Watch a young woman fight to survive and girl in the basement, where control hides behind closed doors and time becomes the enemy. 3 words to sum it up: hidden, controlled, surviving. I'll break it down, drop some flick facts, and tell you if it's worth your time. The film begins by showing a girl named Sarah having dinner with her parents and her sister. Behind her beauty and innocence, Sarah carries a rebellious and restless spirit, while her sister is obedient and never once dares to fight against their parents. It is no wonder that Marie is openly loved and constantly praised. During dinner, Sarah asks her father for permission to attend a friend's party, hoping for a rare moment of freedom, but he immediately forbids her from leaving the house. Irene, her mother, also tells her not to go, even though she had allowed it before, perhaps afraid of provoking her husband's temper. Feeling suffocated by his overprotective nature and humiliated at being treated like a child, Sarah leaves the table in frustration and retreats to her room. Determined not to give up, Sarah quickly forms another plan. Quietly and carefully, she climbs out through her bedroom window, where her boyfriend Chris is already waiting in the yard under the cover of darkness. Later that evening, Irene, burdened by guilt over her earlier harshness, approaches Sarah's room and knocks softly on the door, but there is no answer. Growing uneasy, Dawn unlocks the bedroom door with a spare key. They are stunned to find the room empty, and Dawn's expression turns cold with fury. Meanwhile, Sarah is laughing freely at the party with Chris and his friends. Chris leads her to a quiet place and sings a special song just for her. Alone together, far from rules and control, they spend the entire night wrapped in reckless passion. The next morning, Don catches his daughter being driven home through the back door. Without hesitation, he scolds her harshly for breaking the rules. Instead of apologizing, Sarah boldly argues back and declares that she will leave the house once she turns 18, which is only a few months away. Her defiance deeply angers him. As punishment, Don forbids her from leaving the house for a week. Troubled by her determination to escape, he goes down to the basement and stares at the secret room hidden there. In that moment, a dark and unforgivable idea begins to take shape in his mind. 3 months later, after graduating from school, Sarah speaks with Chris on the phone about their plan to move to Florida and start a new life together. As Irene leaves the house that day, Don calmly asks Sarah to help him move storage boxes to the basement. She's surprised by his unusual kindness, since he rarely allows her any freedom. Her surprise turns into confusion when she discovers a hidden room she never knew existed. Don explains that the previous owner built it as protection from bomb attacks long ago. Once they step inside, Don suddenly exits and locks the heavy door behind him. Panic floods Sarah's body as she screams for her father, pounding desperately on the door, but he ignores her cries and seals the entrance behind a bookshelf. When he hears her voice through the vent, he quickly covers it with thick cloth, silencing her completely. Night falls, and Irene cannot find Sarah anywhere. She becomes anxious and begins searching the house, while Dawn pretends nothing unusual has happened. In the basement, Sarah realizes the boxes she carried contained food, water, and basic daily supplies, carefully prepared in advance. Days later, Dawn enters the room again. The moment the door opens, Sarah tries to run, but a second locked barrier stops her. She falls to her knees and begs her father to release her. Instead, he commits an unforgivable act, sexually abusing his own daughter and destroying her trust forever. The following day, Irene reports Sarah missing to the police. Dawn appears and calmly claims that Sarah deliberately left after turning 18, just as she once threatened to do. The police believe his convincing story and promise to provide updates. Below the house, trapped in the soundproof chamber, Sarah screams until her voice grows hoarse, but no one hears her. 7 long days pass, and she sinks deeper into despair. Chris visits the house, desperate for answers, but Dawn lies and says Sarah went to Florida with her childhood friend Steve. Heartbroken and confused, Chris believes him and assumes she chose another life that on the 21st day, which marks Sarah's 18th birthday, Dawn brings her a cake and a red dress as a twisted gift. He orders her to wear it before assaulting her again. During the endless months of captivity, Sarah never stops searching for a chance to escape, studying every sound and movement. Yet Dawn remains cautious and always prevents her attempts. A year later, she is heavily pregnant and forced to give birth alone with only a manual that Dawn provides. Her first child is born, a girl she names Marie. 2 years later, she gives birth to a son, Michael. Irene slowly grows suspicious of her husband's strangely calm behavior after Sarah's disappearance and suggests hiring a detective, but Dawn refuses, claiming financial strain and growing expenses. He urges her to focus on their other daughter instead of clinging to false hope. 4 years later, Sarah becomes pregnant with her third child. Marie is now 6 years old, and Michael is 4. She pleads with Dawn to allow the children to see the outside world so they can grow up like normal children, but he refuses without hesitation. Knowing exposure would reveal everything done on Christmas Eve, Dawn brings a television into the basement, and for the first time, the children see images of the world beyond concrete walls. Their brief happiness fades when Marie develops asthma not long after. Sarah desperately begs Dawn to take her daughter for proper medical treatment, but he refuses and gives her inappropriate adult medicine instead, ordering Sarah to manage the illness alone. Days later, Chris unexpectedly meets Amy and repeats Dawn's explanation. Amy is shocked and confused. When she confronts her father, he insists he lied only to protect the family. Suspicion grows in her heart. Soon afterward, she finds the basement key Dawn carelessly left behind and goes downstairs to investigate. She almost opens the hidden door behind the bookshelf before Dawn suddenly appears and demands the key back, narrowly preventing discovery. Later, Sarah gives birth to her third child, a son named Thomas. Because the basement feels too cramped for 3 growing children, she begs Dawn to take Thomas upstairs to be raised by Irene. After initial refusal, he agrees. The next day, he places the baby on the doorstep with a letter claiming Thomas is Sarah's child with another man. Irene feels relieved, believing Sarah is alive somewhere. However, Dawn secretly intercepts another hidden letter containing Sarah's desperate plea for rescue and angrily returns it to her. Crushed and hopeless, she is once again forced to endure his abuse. 14 years pass. Sarah becomes pregnant with her 4th child. Her children are no longer small. Thomas grows into a handsome young man, and Marie blossoms into a beautiful young woman. Dawn's disturbing attention slowly shifts toward Marie, but Sarah immediately steps in, warning her daughter never to be alone with him. Marie senses that something dark lies beneath the surface. One stormy night, heavy rain causes the basement ceiling to leak. Realizing this may be her only chance, Sarah uses a flashlight to signal for help through the cracks. A man outside notices the unusual flashing light and approaches the house, but Dawn answers the door and dismisses him. The man thought the flickering light might be a signal from someone desperately asking for help. After he left, Dawn immediately concluded that the signal had come from Sarah. Rage consumed him at the realization that she had tried to reach the outside world. Without further ado, he stormed down into the basement and brutally beat her until she collapsed in agony. As a result of the assault, Sarah suffered a miscarriage, losing yet another piece of hope inside that concrete prison. Meanwhile, Thomas began asking Irene questions about his biological mother, unaware of the truth hidden beneath his own home. In the basement, Marie and her brother rebelled in their own way, frustrated that their lives were painfully dull and confined compared to the world they saw on television. Sarah, weighed down by years of depression and fear, finally snapped. In a surge of anger and despair, she destroyed items in the room, her breakdown shaking the children. When the silence returned, she understood something had to change. It was time for Marie and Michael to learn who Dawn truly was and everything he had done to her. When Sarah revealed the truth, Marie and her younger brother stared at her in shock, their innocence cracking in an instant. She gently tried to calm them, assuring them that none of it was their fault. A few days later, Dawn returned with food, noticeably less than before. Sarah protested angrily, but Don scolded her, calling her ungrateful and blaming her for their situation. Watching his mother humiliated, Michael could not hold back. He lunged at Don in fury, defending Sarah for the first time. Around the same time, Don had been fired from his job, leaving him confused and desperate about how to continue supporting his double life. The food and medicine he brought downstairs decreased even more, causing Marie's asthma to worsen dangerously. Feeling burdened and cornered by the family he had imprisoned, Don made a horrifying decision. One night, he redirected smoke from his car's exhaust into the basement room, intending to kill them all. At the last second, he stopped when Thomas unexpectedly appeared nearby. Panic washed over him, and he rushed downstairs to check on Sarah and the children. Although he had turned off the engine, some of the smoke had already seeped into the room, triggering a severe asthma attack for Marie. Watching her struggle to breathe, Sarah begged Don to take their daughter to the hospital immediately. Overcome with guilt and fear, he finally agreed, but Michael was forced to remain behind. At the hospital, Marie was rushed straight to the ICU. Fortunately, she received treatment just in time, and her life was saved. When a nurse handed Sarah a form to fill out with Marie's details, she realized this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Her hands trembled, but her mind was clear. She deliberately spilled water over the paperwork. As Don stepped away to request another form, Sarah quietly followed the nurse, who happened to be standing near police officers. Don noticed and ran after her, but Sarah reached the nurse and the police first, desperately pleading for help. The truth poured out between broken breaths. Realizing his crimes were about to be exposed, Don tried to flee, but the police quickly intercepted and detained him. He was arrested and taken to the station for questioning, his years of deception finally unraveling. Meanwhile, Sarah entered Marie's hospital room and sat beside her daughter as she slowly regained consciousness. For the first time, Sarah held her child's hand without fear of interruption. That same night, officers searched the house and uncovered the hidden basement room. Michael was rescued from captivity, stepping into freedom under flashing lights. Don later faced trial and was sentenced to life imprisonment for his crimes. Justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. Now free, Sarah moved to a new home and began rebuilding her life with her children. The outside world felt overwhelming yet beautiful, filled with sunlight they had only imagined. Chris, who had spent years searching for answers, eventually found her and apologized for believing the lies about her disappearance. Sarah accepted his apology, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. That concludes the recap. The Girl in the Basement isn't just a true crime drama. It's a stark portrait of control hidden inside ordinary life. Power doesn't rely on constant violence. It survives through isolation, routine, and the careful rewriting of reality. What looks like a normal home becomes a system where silence protects the abuser and doubt traps the victim. Compliance here isn't weakness, it's survival strategy. When escape is impossible, adaptation becomes resistance. The real horror isn't the locked room, but the stolen narrative. Whoever controls the story controls the truth. Flick fact number 1. Alicia Vikander's precise movements were inspired by ballet and robotic reference footage, blending grace with calculated restraint. Flick fact number 2. Oscar Isaac improvised much of Nathan's unsettling body language, reinforcing the imbalance of power beneath his casual charm. The Girl in the Basement isn't about escape, it's about endurance inside a system designed to erase you. Quiet, suffocating, and deliberately restrained, the film replaces spectacle with time itself as the antagonist, where routine becomes control and survival becomes resistance. It asks a harder question than most thrillers. When your voice is taken, how do you keep your identity? On the Flick verdict scale, this is a must-watch, a stark, uncomfortable portrayal of psychological captivity that refuses to sensationalize suffering. Bottom line, this isn't a thriller about action. It's a story about persistence and silence. Drawn to stories that force you to confront what the world prefers to keep hidden. Stories where the silence is not empty, but heavy. Where every locked door, every whispered word, carries the weight of control. At Flick Favorites, we dive beneath the surface of films that refuse to let you look away. We explore the quiet horrors that unfold behind closed doors, the psychological battles that leave deeper scars than any visible wound, and the fragile strength it takes to survive when hope feels out of reach. These are the stories that linger long after the credits roll, echoing in your thoughts, challenging your comfort, and reshaping the way you see power, fear, and resilience. Here, silence is not peace. It is dominance. Survival is not victory. It is resistance. And every small act of defiance becomes a spark in the dark. Comment below. Which moment left you feeling the most powerless, and why did it stay with you?